Sean, would you mind telling me if you get a YouTube thing, a notification? I don't know what's going on. And it's looking like now we are live. Okay, great.
Excellent.
Okay, while we let this build up. Let's let this build up. Chrissy Kells. Hey, Chrissy, how are you? Hey, Sean Rowe, how are you?
Did you share it with my Facebook?
No, you're going to have to share it.
From where?
It's on the Ballroom Throwbacks page on Facebook or the Brtbtv production, or you could also share the YouTube link. Hey, everyone, how are you? How are you? Hello, Carlos Green, how are you? Doing great, thank you. Hey, Robert, my name is Jeff. Hey, Jeff. Hey, Gul Calais. I don't know what language that is, but hello, how are you? Hello, Irene. Hey, Avery, how are you? Tony, hello. Everybody on here on YouTube world, Facebook world, share this live. Let's talk. I have a great friend of mine, a great guest tonight, and we'll be talking about a lot of different topics.
Hey, everyone.
While it's building up, I would like to introduce you Zoliy King. Hey, Kieran, how are you? From those in the ballroom scene, you know this as the legendary Zoliy Miyake Mugler, American Runway. So yes, while it's building up, hey everyone, how are you? How are you? We're going to be talking about a few different things. We're going to be talking, Zoliy is coming to share some great information with you in the city where he lives from. He's originally from New York, but now we live in Chicago. And then we are going to be getting into some mental health topics. And we also have a mental health professional by the name of
Dr. Maya Green is actually the regional medical director for Howard Brown Health. And I have the amazing Crystal Turner, who is actually the psychiatric nurse practitioner here at Howard Brown as well. So we're going to have some amazing information to share with you on how to be able to deal with depression, social distancing and isolation,
anxiety.
Prior to our actual full conversation on May 12th on Tuesday. So it's going to be informal. But of course, the thing that I'm excited to talk about is back to basics.
Okay, so let's get to it. So Zoliy, let's give a little history and who you are for the people. Who are you? Tell the people who you are who may not know you out there in YouTube world.
Okay, for all the people who don't know me, again, my name is Zoliy Masai Miyake Mugler. I started off with the House of Masai back in 2002. My first ball walking All-American was at the Legends Ball at the YWCA. I actually walked back in 1997, got thrown out there for face, and that was quite exciting, but definitely not my category, as you can see.
Well, face is subjective, but I get what you're saying.
Well, teeth are not.
Hey, Charles.
But I am proudly the first $1,000 All-American winner. I am All-American of the Year in numerous states. I have been honored with a number of awards for my community involvement. And I like to think that I've kept or continued the legacy left by my brother, Twan Miyake Mugler of All-American greatness here at
Rest in peace to Twan.
Yes. So he was very picky. He only brought in one person at a time. And then we had a birth of a number of All-Americans starting in 2011, 2010. So that's a little bit about who I am. I've been father of the Carolinas. I was one of the founders of the branch in Florida, and I am one of the rebranders for the Midwestern Canadian chapter now. So I have a lot of exciting things happening here in the Midwest, Chicago and Canada, excuse me, specifically. So that's me.
Okay, when exactly did you move to Chicago?
I moved to Chicago back in February of 2013. I moved here, two reasons, of course. relationship and job offer. The relationship didn't go as planned, but the job continued. I started working at Howard Brown Health in February 2013, and it's been an amazing growth. And for me and Howard Brown, I think by the time I got here, I had to actually take a pay cut and decrease in role. So I was when I came to Howard Brown, I had to start back over as a outreach worker. But before I got here, I had elevated myself to coordinator of drop-in, as well as the lead on our Miami-Dade, Cook County, no, not Cook, excuse me, Broward County and Orange County grants for Miracle of Love. So it's been an amazing growth here at Howard Brown, making sure that they serve my community, Brown and Black and Latinx, and I think we're doing an amazing job. One of the things that I'm excited to share is that it's continuously growing, and Howard Brown is continuously diversifying their workforce. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that are coming down the pipeline for Howard Brown and our community.
Tell me about Back to Basics. That's a free ball that you started in what year?
I started Back to Basics back in 2015. I had a great friend and collaborator of mine, Anthony Galloway, say, "Hey, I got some money. What do you want to do?" And I said, "Oh, I want to throw a ball." And he was like, "Okay, that's great. So how do you want to do it?" And one of the main things that I know that my community is very particular about is how you present to them, right? And so I wanted to make sure that what I believe in is presented, and that's making sure that my community has all the resources, but also making sure that they have a ball that is representative of them, of greatness, making sure that they are in a space that is as beautiful as the art that they present when they're walking. So we got that money, and it was a free ball because I was able to work connections and make sure that I had the resources to present exactly what I think is representative of also myself. So I would never come to a ball half-assed, and so I would never throw a ball that is half-assed. So I continued to make sure that we raised money, and I was able to continue to do the ball for free for a number of years. And I'm proud to say that I believe that it is one of the premier balls here in the Midwest. Each year it continues to grow in attendance, and it continues to grow in participation.
What made you come up with the name and the theme of Back to Basics?
The very first year, I wanted it to be less about effect, based on what I thought was great, but based upon talent.
Right.
And I remember my very first ball back in Mark Ballroom. You actually sat in chairs, you clapped. It was an experience that you always remembered. And so the most important thing was the talent, and you got a whole heap load of that when you didn't have to worry about how people wanted to perceive how you wanted them to bring it. I always loved the category where I got to do whatever I wanted to do. And that's what Back to Basics meant. Taking it back to basics, making it a little bit more simpler for people to participate and let their imaginations run wild.
So Back to Basics was originally set for next month, for June, was it 15th?
June 20th.
June 20th. And what happened?
So originally I was going to push it. I was really going to push it. I thought that the governor and the city of Chicago and its residents would do what was necessary to make sure that our stay-at-home order was short. That did not occur. So
like everywhere else.
True, like everywhere else. I had a little bit more faith with how far away my ball was.
Right.
But I have now spoken to sponsors who, which I agree with, would like to postpone, as well as I can't do anything because of the stay-at-home order. And now that Illinois is rolling back out, even in June, if I was still able to have the ball, I would not be able to have no more than 50 people. And we're not even at phase 5 yet. So it still would be 10 and under. So I am forced with not being able to have it in June, and I'm going to postpone it to September, October. So I'm working on making sure that I'm not stepping on the Midwest toes. So if there's balls during that time, I want to make sure I'm respectful of that. And I want to work with the leadership out here to make sure I'm choosing the most appropriate date. One of the things I've always made sure also is that it's not just Midwest centered. It is a Midwest ball, but I want to make sure that we're continuing the legacy of Midwest balls by bringing national attention.
By bringing out of towners and everybody to come through.
Yes.
And okay, so real quick, what's the theme of this year's Back to Basic Ball?
Oh, the theme actually I came up with last year. I was at my beautiful friend's house, Shannon Lynn Parker, and she invited a couple of friends over for Easter dinner. And of course, during Easter dinner, there's lots of action, right? And the action was on TV. We were watching Studio 54, the documentary. At that moment, I knew that's exactly what I wanted. And so this year's theme was Studio 54, and I had replicas of a club ticket. You know how you used to go to the club, you get a ticket. And so that's what I had created. And so this was the actual invite that I gave out at actually at your ball. That was the beginning of the national tour for Back to Basics. So Studio 54, I thought, allowed people to bring a diverse presentation of energy, of pride, of gayness, of soul, of disco, of music, everything that they could imagine during that era, they had the opportunity to bring. And there's a book that anybody could have go to the library, the Studio 54 book, which actually was one of my grand prize trophies. That is simply amazing. And I fell in love with the whole idea of what Studio 54 meant. It was a time where everybody got to shine. If you got into Studio 54, that was your moment to shine. And it's very reminiscent of ballroom. When you get on that floor, that is your moment to shine. You are the star. The hopes is that you're the star, right? One of the best compliments and advice I got was from the amazing icon Hickabee Milan. He always reminded me, Zoliy, there is nobody that you're in competition with. The only person you're in competition with is yourself. And at Studio 54, you weren't in competition with nobody. You were you're in competition with yourself. You had to outdo yourself every time you got a chance to get on that VIP line and walk through the door.
Okay, so everyone, I will have all the links, because he actually has a website up for this ball, which is www.backtobasicsball.com.
Shout out to Malaga Designs, who helped create a beautiful webpage for me. I was very picky, so thank you very much for your patience.
Oh, Mimi did that?
No. Malaga Designs is part of Kamari Miyake Mugler portfolio. And that includes Malaga Designs that is gifted to his child, Mimi, who is an amazing designer. So if you ever get the chance to work with Mimi, I had Mimi come last year for our lab series where she created effects for people who got tested for HIV or STI screening. They got an effect that was no less than $50, no more than $90. And if you get anything from Mimi, you know that's a steal, right? And then I also had my son Swiper, who offered the same services. So Malaga Design is a part of the portfolio of Kamari Miyake Mugler, which includes Mimi Malaga's fashion design label.
All right, guys, I'm going to have all the links in the thing afterwards. So let's get to tonight's topic. So Zoliy, because of the ball being postponed, we all know, everybody knows everywhere what's going on currently. We've been going through it for the last 6 weeks or so by now. COVID, the pandemic. How do you feel? How have you been coping in this time?
Anybody that knows me knows I love to travel. That is probably my favorite thing to do, to be able to tour, to explore, to break bread. And that has probably been the hardest thing for me to do. I've worked from home. I love working from home, but not being able to see my friends, not being able to see my family, who are all in New York, New Jersey, has been probably the most difficult thing. And I think one of the other things that I'm trying to deal with during COVID is the lack of companionship. And so when you're thinking about quarantine, everybody's talking about quarantine bay. One of the things I realized that I never want to go through a situation like this alone. I never want to go through a situation where I don't have someone who is here and present with me. And I think that after this situation, I know that my next move is not only building generational wealth and a portfolio that allows me to do the things that I believe that I can do and excel in and create a type of wealth that allows me a specific type of living, but also to create a family. And family doesn't always mean that you have to have a boyfriend, but it means that you create a lifelong partner. If kids are in the picture, kids. I even thought about getting a pet. Not there yet because I'm not really here to pick up other people's shit yet. But I
companionship. What have you been wanting the most? What have you been feeling? Have you been going through depression? Have you been going through anxiety? Are you lonely because of the pandemic? Are you lonely because you have no choice but to pretty much stay home during these times? Like what?
I am definitely lonelier. I'm definitely lonelier. I am. I'm an introvert extrovert. So when I'm out there and I'm on. When that is done, I like coming to
so basically you're ambivert. You're a mixture of both.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what makes you an ambivert? For those that don't know, what makes you an ambivert?
When you're trying to help people all the time, when you are trying to sell something, when you're trying to give something, you have to be on all the time. So it's always a smile. It's always a come get this. It's always you deserve that. It's always a be present, because if you're not present, you're not relevant. And so because that takes a lot of energy, when I get in the door, I don't want to talk. I'll text, but I really don't want to talk. That is my time to refill my energy, my space, my environment, so that I can go out and do it all over again the next day. Yeah, so I like peace and quiet when I get into my house, but with peace and quiet, I've enjoyed in the past someone that I could lay with and be in that silence and enjoy a show or listen to music, cook dinner for, and just be in each other's space. And I miss that, and I love that. Being able to have someone who's going to stand beside me, behind me, and in front of me. I don't need anyone. I want someone. And in that essence, I want someone who's going to want me in all of my flaws.
So let's talk then. Are you dating anyone currently?
I am currently not dating. It's I guess what do you call it, a complicated situation.
Okay.
But I was dating someone, and for that time, it was quite beautiful. The type of feeling you get when someone looks at you and they look at you in a way that lets you know that you're theirs and they're proud of that, that they enjoy your hustle, that it makes them want to hustle too, that they are strong in belief that in order to push you, sometimes they've got to disagree with you. And I enjoy all of that. I enjoy someone who is not going to just be a yes, a no. I need somebody who's a yes because, no because.
Someone that challenges you, basically.
Yeah. Now, don't make it difficult, but you can be a little challenging. It's fine. It's fine. Right. There's challenge in everything that we do. Nothing comes easy. Nothing comes without a challenge.
So what are some of the things when you do or you have done, maybe prior to the situation or during the situation to help with your anxiety or to help with those most difficult times? You're in Brazil. How are you? We have a lot of out of the country people talking today.
Oh,
Needless said, I like a challenge. I do as well. Social work wisdom said, thank you for highlighting this important issue. Mental health impacts these populations. Yes, they do.
It does. And it greatly affects us even more so. I think what a lot of people don't realize that are not of Black and Brown and Latinx experience is that when we when we want something, we've got to work 200% harder to get it. 200% harder to get at least 25 to 50% of what a person who is not a Black and Brown or Latinx experience. And so it creates a lot of stress on top of stress on top of stress. And mental illness has not been something that our community has ever really faced head on or really have embraced as something that is truly a health issue, as opposed to a stigma, something that we look down on, something that we don't talk about. I know that growing up, it was something that you didn't talk about. That's a white person's disease. That's a white person's problem. We don't have that here. You get yourself up and you brush yourself up, and you get on doing what you were supposed to be doing. And I think that plays a big effect on how we look at mental health and how we care for ourselves and we go for services. We don't speak about it often. And there's some things that in July that, hopefully I'll be able to share a campaign because while May is the month of mental health awareness, July is the month of mental health awareness for minority folks. And so that is when I'm going to drop the campaign from Life for All, my nonprofit, where we're going to hopefully decrease the stigma around mental health and really get people the services that they need in a non-judgmental way, and help them to begin to be proud of their health and themselves, and being and caring for themselves in the way that they should.
Just to piggyback on something you said, I very much agree with you. I don't feel like within our community, from the Black community to our community, the ballroom gay community, really do face mental health head on. I feel like, of course they focus on HIV, they focus on STI, they focus on PrEP, they focus on even drugs, you know what I'm saying? Even especially as of recent with the crystal meth epidemic. I feel like they definitely do focus on those things, but I feel like they don't focus on what causes a lot of these things, which is the mental health, and which is how people choose to deal with anxiety or depression, or just maybe being bipolar, and a lot of people being undiagnosed and things of that nature. And the things that they do when they're having a manic episode, or when they have, when they're experiencing mania, or when they're experiencing severe depression. A lot of these people get into certain behaviors and patterns because of mental health, which leads into other things, which leads into promiscuity, and which leads to drugs, and not being able to cope with their issues and things of that nature. And like you said, a lot of these things was not talked about, within the home, starting from the home. And
that's an added stigma against you already. So
right.
You're already Black. Now you have the stigma of mental health issues, and it's not treated the same way. So, you can have a white counterpart, and we're just going to be real about that. You can have a white counterpart, they can talk about going to their therapist, they can talk about their mental health issues. But then if you have a Black counterpart who speaks about that, it's oh my God, are you okay? Is this too much for you? Are you going to be able to produce? Like, these are the things that, sometimes you don't want to discuss, because you don't want that type of treatment, because it's not the same treatment.
Yes, guys, have all your questions. You guys have as many questions pertaining to mental health, to mental wellness, to anxiety, to depression. Get the questions ready. He's going to have the specialist come on, and you guys can ask, and we're going to do as much as we can to answer you guys' questions. So some of these questions, I'm not going to say it yet. I'm going to wait till the specialist is on here, so that way you guys can get the best answer that you can get. But I'm realizing that within, as I have a lot of shit with me, and a lot of shit that I'm dealing with now in life. And I've realized over the last few years, I've dealt with a lot of anxiety. I deal with a lot of dealing with this stuff by myself, and coping. And I am a person that likes to be alone. And I realize that more and more, but I also like to have people around me as well. So it's don't want to say a struggle, but I need my alone time, because I'm a person, I need my alone time to when I need to fill up, and to be able to give back. And then and we have Maya Green actually coming on, guys.
This is Dr. Maya Green, the regional director for Howard Brown Health, who has been on the front line since day one.
Hey, Maya.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, I think you look familiar to me.
She is familiar, because she is also a Phoenix, member of the House of Miyake Mugler.
I've seen her before.
You actually seen her at the ball? And she actually did the first COVID live event that we had, debunking the myths and cementing the facts. And it was absolutely amazing. And Maya first told the community, don't go.
Yeah.
She told me, don't go.
One
Please,
thing, Maya, can you like sit maybe away for the light, because you're a little dark where you're at.
You talking to me?
Yeah,
yeah. Okay, perfect. There we go.
It looks good right there. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, Zoliy. So Maya, tell first everybody out there who you are. What do you do? Give it to them.
I am Maya Green. I am a Black woman from the South Side of Chicago, first and foremost. I am a sister, an auntie, and I'm a physician. And so right now, I'm the regional medical director for a healthcare facility, Around Health, for the South and West regions in Chicago. But more than anything, I think right now, I'm a person who likes to facilitate community healing. And so all of that, all the things I am go into that right now, which is much needed in our community.
We have our other guests coming in. Hey,
Hi.
Kristen.
Hi,
Hey,
how are you?
How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Zoliy, would you like to introduce?
Absolutely. So this is the amazing Crystal Turner. She is a registered nurse and has been for the past 20 years, but she specifically has been a psychiatric nurse practitioner for the past 3 years. And yes, I said it, nurse practitioner. So she is no longer a nurse. She is a nurse practitioner and has been practicing psychiatric medicine for the past 3 years. And it's so amazing to be able to have people of color that can talk to our experience, that can talk to the issues that we're facing and the issues that we want to overcome.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much.
So let me ask first Maya, then Crystal a question, and then we can kind of get into it. Maya first, how have you been dealing with this pandemic, with COVID, just with everything? How have you personally been dealing with the situation?
Personally, it's every day, just taking it day by day, doing what I can. We're at a time where a lot of times I feel people feel forced to either go into a certain space of trauma, or in some circles, they're forced to have to try to look at the bright side of things. For me, it's just been a little of both, seeing it impact the community I grew up in and the community I'm in can be sad. So what I do is every day I get up, I might have my cry that morning. I get myself together and I come out. And when I come out, I see so many people doing what it takes for our community, helping each other out, and just taking it day by day, honestly.
And Crystal?
Yeah, so I agree with a lot with what Maya's saying. And I would also say I've been very intentional to utilize this time to really try not to come from a place of fear, because I know particularly when things initially happened within my household, there was a lot of fear from my husband, I would say. And I know that can trickle down to the family, to our kids, and the fear, I think could further be, it could be counterproductive. So I've had to really do things for myself to understand, okay, this pandemic, there's only so much, I really don't have any control over the pandemic itself, but what do I have some control over within my life? What can I do to further help me feel that I am trying to protect myself? So for example, I try to really check how much I'm really tuning into the news. For me, just from my personal experience, sometimes the redundance of it can be a bit fear-based, and that can really impact if you're not cognizant and not aware of looking at things from a critical standpoint, or analyzing things a bit more. And then also looking at what I can do for my personal body to try to protect it. So what I have control over is how I care for my body, to step that up a little bit more. So I've been doing things like that. At the same time, trying to stay informed to what's going on currently. And yeah, checking on family, checking on loved ones, trying to figure out how I can kind of extend myself to other people, where I can make a difference.
So let me ask both of you ladies, in both of your fields, you have to give a lot of yourself. When giving so much of yourself, when do you guys get the chance to kind of like give back to you and put it back into you? Because in this type of work, you are pouring a lot of you into helping and being there for people, because you kind of have to be strong and guide them. So what do you guys do to get through that?
That's a good question. A little bit before this, I think Crystal and I connected surrounding self-care and taking dreams off the shelf. It was, interesting time. And I think that prepared us for what some sort of plan is. So something I do for myself is those dreams that I had on the shelf, I take them, I took them off, dusted them off, and started to put focus into that. That kind of helped to, when you go into tunnel vision on a vision that is your life's purpose or whatever source you believe in gave you, you'd be amazed, or you wouldn't be amazed if you do it, how fast you can get, very focused. And when you come out, the world is still there with its problems and things like that. But given time to invest in you, you are your number one kind of resource. I think part of also what we do is we're providers, because there is some level of fulfillment in our life that we get from doing this work. I've never seen in our communities just better support come from outside the community. So we are within the community and honored, blessed to be available to give that support. The other thing I do is I really focus on an activity regimen, not necessarily for body change or show or anything like that, but for my mental wellness and for my mental well-being, just bottling or repivoting any nervousness or, dare I say, anxiety that comes during this time into that kettlebell workout, or my kettlebell consists of water jugs. So, right now. And so pivoting into that really helps me to kind of manage some of what I'm feeling before the day gets ahead. And I just kind of operate on the idea, if I wake up every morning and I conquer myself, then conquering the world is a second to that. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I will chime in with that 100%. So, I start my day out, although we have been busy as providers, but there's still an element of a slowdown in life that I have felt, when I would speak of, the hustle and bustle of getting to a destination, getting from a destination, traffic. I mean, we've been working in the community, but also there's been a level of working from home. So there's been a level of slowdown in some ways. So I've been trying to utilize my time very intentionally. So I'm waking up in the morning, I'm waking up at 5 a.m., I'm meditating and praying and starting my day with those intentions, setting those intentions. How am I gonna control how I'm looking at this day before the day grabs hold of me? Definitely the working out, that's releasing endorphins that I instantly notice if I work out, how my anxiety does tinker down. Trying to really, I've been doing things like juicing in the morning, which is new for me, but even getting those nutrients into my system, I noticed that, and Maya did mention a thing in regards to, yes, utilizing this time on what can I do to help myself grow? I can educate myself, but all education doesn't come through, schools and universities. You can self-educate. This is the time. It's very important for that. You know what I mean? So I've just been very intentional about, and I've not been perfect. However, I've been much better at utilizing my time and taking control of that time. So those things I've noticed have been helpful.
I want to chime in. I think this is the perfect time for us as people of color to take hold of not dreams, but realities. If you take off, like Maya said, and you brush it off, it's no longer a dream. You are focused on it, it's a reality. And if you steady fast to it, it will be something that you can now walk into the world that is new while the world is still old. This is a time for us to create generational wealth. I think, and sadly, during times of pandemic, during times of recession, this is where we don't focus on how we can be better as opposed to how we are going to maintain. Maintaining means that you also have to grow. And so if we don't take this time to take our realities and make them worth something for us to be able to live a better life, live a better way of moving around society, then we're losing. We're losing a premium time of actually time. This is time for embetterment, for generational wealth, for making your life better in so many different ways that you weren't because you were just trying to maintain.
Absolutely. Zoliy. I think one of the things that I remember talking to one of my siblings who's like, oh, I'm in school right now. Should I just drop out of school because of what's going on? Should I? And I was like, oh, absolutely not. Here is one of the things we don't talk about. Well, we do. We talk about it in our community, but we can benefit from talking about more. In times like this, in the pandemic, the world usually goes to sleep. And you can read it it's all throughout history. And we don't know we're asleep because we're in a pandemic. We're anxious. We're busy being anxious and busy focusing on trauma and busy, and not to say those things don't have their place and need to be dealt with, but we're so busy being with anxiety that we're literally asleep in our trauma. Those people that can wake up and get started on manifesting their realities and figure out what they're going to do right now. And you don't need, I know somebody that went to the store, bought sugar, flour, the things to make a cake, and started a baking business during this pandemic and is doing well. Nice. So it's not like, oh, you have to have this Fortune 500 like background to get it started. You can go and get sugar, flour, and baking stuff and start a baking business. Said, oh, everybody's upset. They're going to need comfort food. Let me be like, and blends these interesting comfort desserts into cakes and pies and puddings and stuff like that. And is doing very well.
I actually have seen a lot of people be creative during this time with making money because, a lot of people are on grind time because everybody, people that have no income coming in, they have to find a way. And I have seen a lot of people be creative through this time. I really have.
Yeah. Especially our community that is gig-based a lot of the time. So if we have gigs, then you don't have insurance to fall back on. You don't get to apply for unemployment. You don't get to, rely on your job to say, we're just going to furlough you and we're going to pay you throughout this recession. So, we as a people, we always are nimble enough to find a way out of no way. But how can we make that a continued business? That don't mean, okay, now the world is back, so I stop baking. That means that now you get this LLC, now you get some insurance, and now you take in mobile orders, you create a website. This is what we need to be doing as a people so that we can create this wealth that's continues to invest in ourselves.
To piggyback off something, I have a lot of questions, but something that Crystal said earlier, I wanted to ask.
And I would say that I started cooking and baking. I made an apple pie and a sweet potato pie, and it was quite delicious. You can ask my friend Raven.
Zoliy, your camera froze. I don't know what happened.
Oh, are we good now?
Something Crystal said earlier, I wanted to piggyback off of. When you said like the redundancy of like not tuning in all the time and all that, this is something I've been struggling with. And I know that people out there that feel the same way. How do you deal with the monotonous shit, as you know? Because it's like, okay, because what happened is, I'm going to tell you what was going on with me. I was watching every day. And I'm a CNN person by nature. And I get infuriated at watching, who's sitting up there talking about stuff. Everything, the blame is being diverted to someone else. It's always something new. Then you have the other people speculating. And then, just the media period, whether it's in support of it or wanting to inform, it's still that battle watching. So then I got to the point where it's like, you know what? It's the same shit every day. I'm not going to watch it every day because they're not saying anything really new. But then I still don't want to be the one that doesn't know what's going on. How do you deal with the monotonous for the people? Because as we all know, probably on here, that's what contributes to so many people's anxiety right now, and so many people's
Yeah.
fear is watching this stuff. And as we all know, most fear is from the unknown. You don't really know when it's going to be over. They're reopening up cities sooner. You don't know if that's going to last or if they're going to close it back up because if it's another surge, or are they, you know, as you know, they first were saying, is there ever going to be a vaccine for this, right? Is there going to be a cure? Because there's so many different things that they've been saying from the jump, when I just feel they don't fully know. They're still learning as we're learning behind them. How do you deal with that?
Well, for me, I come from the aspect that what you tune into is going to get bigger, and like, so for example, Trump, I don't want him to become bigger in my world. You know what I mean? It's enough, and I do feel that. Well, what I have found for myself is that anything that's really big enough that's going on in the news, I'm finding out about it even without me watching the news, you know, because I have people around me who watch the news. So it's always being reported back to me. But I get the part of wanting to be informed. So, you know, even if it was, let's just say, and I don't do this, but let's just say I'm going to watch the news once. I'm going to watch it in the morning. I'm going to get informed about what's current. And then that's going to be it for the day, because usually it's a repeat in each, you know, 5 o'clock, 8 o'clock, whatever the news times are, it's constantly repeated throughout the course of the day. So maybe, you know, you tuning in to understand if you want to be informed, but then, you know, if from me, what I've noticed that has helped me is if I have an understanding that what I focus on grows, then there are other things that I can focus on in terms of being inspired. I listen to a lot of YouTube stations and people who have different spins on maybe what's going on, different ways to look at things. Like Maya was mentioning, you know, opportunity to work on other things for yourself. You know what I mean? So I don't want to give my power to I don't want to give my power to things external to me. Do you know? Like, I understand those things are there, but I want to go within me to understand what it is in me that I'm able to bring out to offer to the world. You know what I mean? Because that's what I have control over. That's what I have control over. You know, but I do get, because I mean, I talk about this with my family often. I mean, there are some people who want to be more informed, you know what I mean? But I tend to see that if you look at people who are watching the news throughout the course of the day versus someone who's not, you may possibly see the difference in levels of anxiety just in that. So just in knowing that, it's just like making that decision in, you know, what do I want for myself? What am I feeding myself through what I'm listening to? What am I feeding myself through what I'm seeing? What am I feeding myself through what I'm eating? You know, it's all of those aspects.
All right, so let me get some of these questions.
Can I just say, read your news. Don't watch it. You can control what you read, but you can control that narrative, but you can't always control what you're watching based on what the newscasters are presenting. Yeah, there's more drama that can be introduced in a live media. It's more drama that can be introduced. Read stuff that isn't read the CDC's website. Read things that are going to give you the hardcore facts that you know you need so that you can stay informed. New York Times, these are reputable places. Los Angeles Times. Read as opposed to watch, for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so they add, Kieran Prophet said, how do you know when you're going into a depression?
Well, I mean, depression can manifest in different ways for different people. So first of all, I think it's maybe important to notice what your normal function, your baseline functioning is. And if you're noticing any shifts, so some of the typical things that can happen, two of the major things that happen is having a decreased mood, a lower mood, or having less interest in things that you normally would have interest in, being a bit more withdrawn. For some people, being more irritable. You know, those sometimes are symptoms that somebody might notice, but usually it's some form of a shift that you're recognizing from what your, I would say, baseline is. I mean, some people's baseline is that they're a little depressed, but if this is someone who's asking who's normally not feeling depressed, and then they're having some types of shifts, that might be something to look at. You know, be it the mood and feels like it's dropped a little, or that lack of interest in things that normally you would have interest in, or a lack of pleasure in things maybe that you would have normally had pleasure in.
How do you how do you know the difference between maybe light depression to a severe depression, and how do you deal with that?
That's a good question. So someone who has major depression, so that's more clinical.
Right.
So someone like that would be someone who definitely, those two areas that I mentioned, having a low mood or having lack of interest that lasts for at least 2 weeks or longer. So all of us can have moments, even in the midst of this pandemic. Sometimes being in the house for too many days has caused me to, I've woken up a day and felt a little bit melancholy, maybe I'll say, a little bit down, not where it was changing my functioning necessarily, but just feeling that not as upbeat as maybe I normally would be. So that may be a difference. You may feel a little something, but when you're experiencing something and it's extending for weeks at a time, then that's when I would say it's getting to be a bit more where you may want to address those things, on a different level.
Is there such a thing as situational depression versus clinical?
I definitely
Can you
believe
explain?
situational could be
I believe too.
situational could be over a breakup.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It could be over losing your job. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, between the two, because I think a lot of times when people say,
yeah, or even someone who's lost a loved one.
I think it's important to talk about that, because a lot of times we'll say,
yeah, so even someone who has lost someone, a loved one, for example. So there's a real grieving process that has to go on. You're sad, but that is not a time necessarily that you would try to treat that with any type of from a pharmaceutical standpoint, because there's a real grieving process that we're not trying to stifle through medicine. The thing that happens is after a period of time, if that's extended past what might be considered, to be expected from that situation, that then, and the person is losing their ability to actually truly function. So then that may be where you're looking at things a bit differently. But yes, definitely situational situation. I mean, someone loses their job, obviously, there's some grief with that. There's some stress with that.
I want the community to know that, because a lot of times when people say depression, they just automatically think, oh, this person has mental issues. And so a person can be depressed and not be clinically depressed. And
right.
For people to respect that and support them as such.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then a situation right now, this pandemic, I think is, I've seen a lot of people discount or not discount their own feelings and own situation that may be depression and may not. That's why it's very important to seek out stuff. You can find it on Facebook. You can find services that and people that are there to kind of help and support during this time. It's absolutely one of the things that people, especially in my community, I've seen try to denormalize. Like, me, something's wrong with me. And I just want to say that, it doesn't necessarily have to be wrong for you to feel your feelings and for you to get assistance and get support with that. For me, I know I'm a person, if it's wrong for me not to get the support, because we all kind of need support of each other. And if somebody that's their specialty, like Crystal, she's a specialist in this, So to contact someone like Crystal and say, hey, I need some help. I need some support. I need some, people like Crystal help us all do what we need to do so that we can go on in our lives and our roles and help someone in our capacity. It's a circle, and it comes full circle.
And let me ask y'all this. Zoliy said something earlier. Okay, let's get to it. Black and brown people, as we know, it's still a lot of stigmas on mental health. Nobody wants to be labeled as crazy. And how do you reach those people that need help, but I don't want to say don't want to seek it, but they don't know how to do it, or they don't want to, or they don't realize, or they feel like they can handle it on their own? How do you reach those people, though?
I mean, there is a lot of stigma, and there's a lot of awareness that has to take place. I think that I see that trying to come to the forefront a little bit more than maybe in the past. I mean, we have a long history with mental health, and you know, in earlier in the 50s or the 40s, people were really mistreated who had mental illness. You know, so there's you know, and some of those perspectives are still actually carried through to today. How some people may have viewed people with mental illness in those times. So I think that from my standpoint, having a level of patience with understanding that, but still being a part of providing awareness that, because regardless of what diagnosis you've been deemed with or what you're experiencing, I mean, we have organs throughout our body. You know, bless you. We have organs throughout our body. So our brain and those structures that happen there is no different than a heart, you know what I mean? Our liver, you know, our kidneys. If we have some type of dysfunction or something going on that's not functioning as optimal as it could. So trying to really bring that awareness is a thing. And also in our communities, Black communities, you know, and brown communities, but I'm speaking from Black communities particularly, just for certain things that, you know, African Americans and Black people have been, you know, have many reasons to not trust the healthcare system, from just the way we've been, you know, treated in the past through healthcare. So it's really, you know, it's really going to take earning that trust from many people, you know what I mean? But for sure, trying to bring awareness and understanding that these labels that someone has put out there is not something that a person has to ascribe to when they want to try to help themselves be the most optimal person they could.
Yeah. The other thing I want to say, definitely agree with everything Crystal said. That's why it helps to have people who do the work, psychiatrists that do the work, and mental wellness that do the work, like Crystal, who, you know, it's easier when some of the cultural barriers are lifted, because just frankly, you've experienced some of the things that I've experienced. You know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about things and cultural things that come to belong to my community that just are, versus you trying to quote help me by getting me to do some sort of assimilation into a different culture or things like that. So it definitely helps to also have Black and brown wellness experts, mental wellness experts, you know, because mental wellness is one of those things. It's hard because a lot of times it's not something that you would ascribe when you see it. Now that I've worked with Crystal and her team and everything like that, and the services, there are signs that you can look at and see what's going on, but it's not like a cut on the arm, a broken leg. You can't just look at somebody and say that. And so because we can't just look at somebody, a lot of times it's not even acknowledged or respected, because you can't, off the top, a lot of times you can't see it.
Yes. And it's very true that, you know, in our communities, you know, Black men are diagnosed with schizophrenia much quicker than any other race. You know what I mean? And oftentimes it's not accurate. You know, there are times where it's just not accurate. You know what I mean? So it is important for there to be more Black and brown providers who really, you know, who really want to truly, from a genuine place, help people with mental wellness. And sometimes that is looking a little bit more thoroughly at what's going on with someone, rather than quickly labeling someone with something that may not be accurate. And then they're living with this thing that's not necessarily the true diagnosis. If it is a true diagnosis, then that's one thing. But, you know, there are situations where Black and brown are misdiagnosed or overdiagnosed with things that are not accurate. You know, so it's a lot of trust that has to be gained, and there needs to be more providers of color who can definitely relate to the people who are seeking services.
Neva Smile asks, what do you do when you feel lost? As of recent, everything been affecting her mental health. And she suffered from anxiety and depression for years. She's also a clean freak, and it's nothing to do right now. So do you think this is the new normal for them? They want to know, what can they do?
I mean, I would definitely say to be in touch with a mental health provider. I mean, even though we have this pandemic going on and a lot of things are shut down. I mean, even for us where we're doing things via telehealth. So people are still being able to see providers, to get services. So I would definitely say that is the first place to start, and it's hard to say what the new normal will be, or I never would want to limit someone to feel that this is just what it's going to be for them, because there are multiple ways that a person can seek services. So there's a psychiatrist or a nurse practitioner, but there are also therapists. Oftentimes, there are times where someone has mild to moderate depression where therapy is as effective as an antidepressant. So, seeking out a provider, a therapist to be able to talk about what's going on, to be able to maybe process things that have happened in the past, process how maybe a person is looking at situations presently, what are their current coping strategies. There's so much that can be gained from therapy in terms of especially in terms of coping with what's going on right now.
Can I add a little bit of a suggestion? I think one of the things that we don't do as much is create a support system that we can count on, that know that we're going through any type of situation. And so when I first started at Howard Brown, I didn't trust nobody. I don't trust people because people will tend to get in your way and be a roadblock for your success. And one of the first people I began to trust was Maya. And she was literally the first person I said, Maya, listen, okay, let's go get our nails done. Let's go get our feet done. Create a support system of at least 3, because you're going to need to rotate, because when you're pouring into someone so much, they need some time to recuperate too, because what you're pouring into them, it can be some heavy stuff. But if you create a support system of at least 3 and create a code that one of them knows that when you reach out, that this code means I need you right now. And then just check in with them, let them share, and let them check in with you. But we have to come from a place of trust to be able to create that trust system. So if you're not ready for a therapist, when the hope is that you really, the hope is that you will be, create a support system to get you started. I can now count Crystal as a support system. And so I might call Crystal and say, hey, you're doing this yoga, you're doing a mindfulness, you're doing, you're preparing. Can I do that with you through Zoom?
Mm-hmm,
and I'm serious. So Maya will tell you, I'm going to get out there. I'm going to get out there.
I have a couple people here asking, how do you help from over-medicating yourself? Some people are talking about they've been using weed to cope. They've been drinking way more than they normally would. How do you guys deal with that? What can you do? And there's a couple people that asked. They said the over-medicating has been, they know it's a problem.
Yeah, self-medicating, that I would say definitely trying to, in those situations, I would definitely say trying to reach out to a specialist to try to really find, because what a person is doing in those situations, they're trying to cope. Sometimes this is what we know, to cope with, So while those are things that a person can use to cope, they may be using that. There are many other coping strategies that a person could try to. Sometimes you have to explore different ways to see what works for you, because one thing that works for one person that's more from a healthier standpoint may not be what works for another. But there's multiple ways or coping strategies that one could try to implement, and it just takes kind of trying those things. And I did want to piggyback back off what Zoliy has said just a moment ago, and that is it is very important. One of the things I've had concerns with some people that I service is being quarantined, and how much, particularly if they live by themselves, and how isolated they are.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a concern too. And so yes, trying to find people, even if it's definitely if it's doing things via Zoom. You know what I mean? We've done that with my mom, because we haven't been going to see my mom. My mom's 77, and one of my sisters already lives there. So it's like, we don't all want to go bombarding her with our presence, because she may be, even though I feel like I would be fine, she may not be if I'm a carrier. So everyone doesn't want to go over there, but then that leaves her being kind of a bit more isolated. You know what I mean? But it's been tremendous for her. She looks forward to those little Zoom gatherings that we have, because there's a level of connection. Or even if it's calling someone, you know what I mean? Having those people that you call, I think that's a very good point. And I just want to mention, just in history, like in our culture, you know, I know those numbers may be changing now, but in the past, our suicide rate within our culture was lower. And I've read before that oftentimes that was attributed to culturally, we were more supportive. We were more as group based, you know what I mean? Versus some cultures where it's more individually based, you know what I mean? So individually based, there's less support there. You know, there's no one as much to lean on, you know, but you know, you recognizing in our cultures those things that have sustained us in the past to some degree, and trying to find, if possible, you know, that group, that support, you know, it can take you a long way.
Speaking of what Crystal is saying, I've had patients that have had success, and I myself to a certain, now that I think about it, I myself to a certain extent, finding different things that you're interested in. I mean, you know, I was like, oh, what am I going to do? I gotta get my body together. You know, I gotta get, you know, because I want my body to be efficient if I get COVID. You know, speaking to what Crystal was saying about putting certain things in our body and watching things. At this point, and I want to say that is not an opportunity that was not offered as a blame or a shame for people that are experiencing that. That is just that, you know. And so my patients have had some success with almost, I don't want to call it a replacement, but pivoting their focus. Like I myself, I became interested in this thing called stealth, and it's just you use your phone as a video game and you play it while you're in plank, you know. And then I find out there are thousands of other people that are doing it, you know. And so you start that, you start conversations, and then eventually the support about life just happens. You know, I have a friend, my partner, she just started, you know, playing with drones, and now all these new people who drone, you know, my friend I mentioned earlier started baking, and now all these support like groups of people who bake, and that's conversation. So it's not just baking, it's talking about how we're dealing with the trauma of what's going on with this pandemic, how we're dealing with the trauma of worrying about our families and not being able to see them. And so remember, and then also speaking to what Crystal said, a lot of times for our community, that was not only our support, but that was how we celebrated everything in a world where a lot of times we're not celebrated, you know? And
Absolutely.
so thinking about even homegoing services, right? We call them homegoing services. We're celebrations of life and those kind of things. In a world where a lot of times people from our community, that's it. You know, their legacies live on in us, but the world don't talk about it anymore. That is it. And so coming together was a staple. So finding ways to, when you can't physically connect, to still socially connect and maintain social responsibility are important. Whether it's a pen pal, you know, snail mail. I have people that found, you know, happiness mailing just old school letters or old postcards with stickers that, you know, I found this sticker and it speaks to something special in our life. It's a random sticker, but it's a bird that we saw, you know, and it was red, and it, you know, and putting that on the postcard, making your own postcards out of those little dollar flashcards that, you know, and just finding ways to connect, you know. And then there is the connection that when we love to be in each other's presence, but for those of us that believe in the presence of a higher power, you know, Crystal spoke to that, you know, just for those of us that believe in it, you know, really strengthening that connection, really getting into meditation, really getting into centering. And so those are just some of the things that myself and patients I work with have found beneficial.
Neva said, does mental health and depression stop you in a relationship? Because I never had a successful relationship due to my challenges.
She wants to know if, I'm sorry, can you read that again?
Does mental health and depression stop you in a relationship? Because I never had a successful relationship due to my challenges.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, I would need to know so much more of an individual, but it is possible. I mean, because for some people, it depends on how that depression manifests. For some people, depression in itself, they're more withdrawn. You know, they may not be as outgoing. They may not have that drive to get out there and put effort into relationships. That's not always the case, but that's the case in some situations. Sometimes, depending on what has happened in a person's past, if they have some trauma, trusting could be a big thing. You know what I mean? And you know, trust is needed, you know, for relationships to sustain themselves, you know. So it could be a number of things, you know, but for sure, oftentimes things that have happened in our past might be impacting us in our present, you know, particularly things that may have happened in our childhoods.
I think that's the best way she can answer that without knowing too much, Neva. Just understand that. That's kind of a broad thing, honestly, because as we all know, relationships go much deeper than that. You know, you may be hooking up with the person. You may withdraw yourself. You know, some people are not able to deal with when somebody is withdrawn.
True.
Or mood swings can play a huge role in how you communicate in relationships and how you don't communicate in relationships. And sometimes people aren't aware why you're having these mood swings, and so it can be looked at in the wrong light, as opposed to what's asking what's causing this. It becomes a why are you at me like this, or why are you mad at me like this, or why are you always so moody. It can play a lot into without knowing too much about a person, but just paying attention to the little things that you notice about yourself can and then communicating them can say a lot to how you can develop your relationship.
Marvel said, I think it's important to realize the impact that the redundancy of watching the media is having on your energy. Identifying it allowed me maybe to make a conscious decision on how much I watch and take in.
Absolutely.
Hold on. This was to Crystal. Someone said that you talked earlier about juicing. What would you suggest about intake of certain things? Does that help with your moods?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
It was towards you. Someone said that you mentioned juicing earlier on, and what would you suggest to help with moods in regards to that?
Moods in terms of juicing? Well,
Correct.
what I would say is that oftentimes we are just malnourished people, even though we might not be, so sometimes we think of being malnourished as being someone who's frail, you know, is not eating, but we could be obese and be malnourished because we're not getting nutrients in. Absolutely. So it's not so much about the specific but understanding that, okay, I'm going to try to do away with processed foods and do things that are natural, like greens, any kind of greens, kale, spinach, you know, any kind of fruit or vegetable that you could put into a drink or a juice that's not, well, obviously if it's fresh, it's not processed. All of those have different nutrients, and you can look those up. But oftentimes when I juice, it's just something for me that I've noticed for myself. Is when I'm juicing, it's usually green. You know, I'm utilizing different types of greens, you know what I mean? And I might put other things in there like ginger or turmeric or, you know, some apple or some lemon. You know, there are so many YouTube videos you could watch on juicing, you know what I mean? Where they have the recipes there and they'll talk about what those specific things might have. But what I've noticed for myself is when it's a green juice and I drink that, I'm automatically given a level of energy. And it would be interesting, you know, to try juicing for 21 days and you just see for yourself, or 7 days, and you just see for yourself, or if you're noticing anything different, you know?
Yeah.
Dr. Green, is there anything that we can use in terms of nutrients or vitamins that would help give us like an energy boost when we've been in the house for so long? Is there anything that you can suggest?
You said any vitamins that would help give a boost?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about vitamins that will give a boost. What I can tell you in terms of protecting your immune system in what we're dealing with now is zinc is one that's been a very big, widely promoted. And I've been reading about that. Ironically, I had been taking zinc since last year because I had gone to my doctor and I had a deficiency in, I think it's copper. I think when there's something going on with, or my copper level was high, somehow it equaled that I needed to take zinc. And ironically, my son had like the worst flu ever. And I don't know if it had anything, it was attached to this virus or not, but it was in the middle of February. And almost all of his eighth grade class was out with this same thing. And as a mother, I'm there, I'm caring for him for this whole week, and I didn't catch it. You know what I mean? Like normally I would get sick, you know, and I would have gotten sick. So I almost attribute that to the zinc, because it does have, you know, efficacy in helping to build the immune system. And other herbs, you know, I know elderberry is another one that's spoken to that helps with protecting the immune system. I was trying to think off the top of my head of something that I could think of that instantly gives energy that's a supplement. And that's go ahead,
just
Maya.
a basic supplement. One of the, you know, that old supplement Geritol that people forget about. Geritol is good for supplements, but as far as juicing, the ones that give energy are kale, definitely celery. So if you just start with a 4-ounce glass and take it as a shot of celery every day, it will help. Adding ginger to that also, like speaks to what Crystal was saying about boosting your immune system. As far as once you start juicing for that down feeling, blending in after that some avocado, that'll that boost of energy that you were talking about. Blending in avocado. Avocado is actually one of the ones where if you maintain half of an avocado in something, whether you eat it on a salad or if you blend it, I like to blend it in my smoothies right now because I'm frontline. I'm staying at a hotel because I don't want to go and impact my family. I keep my avocados. I got my little blender right there. And I keep it and I put it in, I mix it with, you know, a little bit of honey sometimes, and, you know, vanilla, a little bit of Himalayan salt, put some in there, ginger, things like that. And that avocado is one of those things that will function to lift that energy or lift that mood. And it will, I've seen it stabilize. It's worked for me. I read it. One of my, she's my sister from another mother, Venetia, originally told me about it, and it does. It'll keep that mood. It'll keep it, and it'll lift it.
I'm gonna have to try that one.
Yeah,
avocado. I'm gonna have to try that. I'm gonna have to. Try
How do you guys feel about tea? Because I have somebody very close to me really into like different herbal teas, and I've been drinking a lot of tea this past month. Different teas, a lot lemongrass. I mean, elderberry.
I was going to mention the elderberry.
Yeah, a lot of different tea. The peppermint tea that actually, a few people that felt that they had COVID as well. When they started drinking a certain peppermint tea, they started feeling relief. It was shocking, and several people said the same thing.
We'll look at the studies. I think the peppermint tea, you hit it right on the head because it does deal with some of the passages. I know originally historically, yes, elderberry. Yes, elderberry historically. I'd have to look into it. I'm pretty sure there's studies that show that the overuse of elderberry can have some non-positive effects for this particular situation. But definitely do look into that. Historically, yes, elderberry. And when this is over, yes, elderberry. Since you're on that topic, since we're on this topic, I want to talk about that onion citrus steam that everybody is talking, and ginger steam that everybody is talking about. So while it does have its natural benefits, and while that steam is good for your skin, it's good for your passages, things like that, it will not prevent the coronavirus. It won't prevent it. Not to say don't do it because it's good for so many other things, but when people be like, oh, I took my steam, so I'm good on that. You know, good on the other social responsibilities. It won't kill the coronavirus. It won't prevent the coronavirus. Yes, it is good and healthy for your skin, for your sinuses, for your nasal passages, but it does not kill the coronavirus.
So it's a myth.
We went way off. Yeah.
And we're going to get back to that. We're definitely going to be doing a debunking the myths and cementing the facts part 2 that we did back in March 26th. So we're definitely going to do that again so that people are prepared when the states begin to roll out phase 5 of reopening and getting back to business, so that you're prepared on the type of testing that you need to get, the type of PPE equipment that you should absolutely have when you walk out the door, so that you are being socially responsible and making sure that not only you get sick, but others that you may come in contact don't.
Question, they ask, how do you continue to be strong mentally when you leave the role of victim behind?
Mm.
The role of victim?
Did they clarify? So they could be, ask them if this is what they're checking out. I remember certain things that happened in my life. And for a long time, that trauma I was acting out the results of that trauma for a long time, until one day I said, hey, whatever was done to me by another person was done to me by that person. They don't get to live their life and mine. That was the day I decided that I was going to leave that and all that, and leave those actions that I consistently, or those patterns that I had developed as a result of my thoughts becoming things, like you mentioned, Crystal, that my focus was on, they did this to me, they did, and one day I was just like, here's where I am now, here's where I want to be. And I need to focus on getting there, because they got to live their life. They got to do their actions. They don't get to live. Their actions don't get to live in my life. Is that what you're talking about when you say that?
JFF for life, if you can reiterate on that, that would be great, because we want to answer that question the right way for you. They ask, what do you feel when you've lost control, when you've always been dominated in life? Always, I guess they meant to say when you've always been dominant in life.
And you've lost control?
Mm-hmm. They said it was Maya. They said correct. That's what they're talking about.
So let me piggyback on what Maya said for that statement, because I've definitely been someone who's victimized myself in the past, and oftentimes I think that, in some ways I think that could be, and this is just my perspective, it could be easy for many people of color when you've been in situations where you've been oppressed, you know what I mean? You can kind of take on that narrative, and I've gone to therapy in the past, so I will say this, proudly, that one thing that the therapist I had worked with at that time had, wanted me to try to go back to to when maybe I first recalled, those thoughts or the person right before that, so with the mindset that there was a younger me who didn't have all of those victimizing thoughts. And when I was able to think back to that person, that essence was pretty powerful, because that essence is actually still with me, of that person who was I before those things happened. And I know some people have childhoods where maybe they can't recall, they always remember having been somewhere where they were hurt or have pain. In this moment, I'm speaking to, sometimes we can trace back to where a time before we recall those pains, and trying to kind of connect to that energy of who you were at that point, and really trying to identify when those things started, you know what I mean? And it's trying to heal from those things, and being able to recognize it and recognize, that that's not a truth, you know what I mean? But it could be something that subconsciously we kind of took on, because it, it came so powerfully or at such a young age. So yeah, I wanted to speak to that. And I'm sorry, what was the next question the person had asked?
Hold on, let me skip around, because so many people I haven't even responded to. Joelle Sadden said, I'm a therapist and work with many people who I've had to say, no, it's not you. You're upset because of racism, and you're not crazy for being angry. We definitely need more Black and brown providers. They said, thank you for having these beautiful sisters on. Positive affirmations. Okay. How do you
Dr. Green has to get off shortly. Well, like now.
What did you say?
I know the doctors have to get off like now.
Okay, cool.
But Crystal, I'm sorry, would you be willing to stay on 5 minutes longer?
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Maya,
Thank
before
you
you get
so
off,
much.
wait, before Maya gets off, because people have asked, do y'all have Instagrams? They want to follow you guys.
And I plan to get more active on this Instagram, but I will provide that now. So my Instagram account is Inspire One Wellness, Inspire the number one wellness.
You guys heard that? Inspire the number one wellness. Maya, you on Instagram?
Yes, I have I need to get more active on the one that I have. I am HIV Real Talk.
Ah.
HIV Real Talk, guys. For Maya, who wants to follow Maya, HIV Real Talk. We have Crystal for a few more minutes, so Maya, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Please make sure that y'all
Thank
tune in.
you.
We're going to have
Thank
Dr.
you.
Maya
Thank you.
Green soon again. Thank you so much, Maya, for giving your time and your energies and being on the front line for our community each and every day. You're more appreciated than you realize.
Thank
Awesome,
you.
awesome,
And it was
Maya.
amazing working with you all. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for the work you all are doing
Thank you
and
so
supporting
much.
the community during this time. All right, you all. Peace.
You have a good night.
Bye, Maya.
Crystal, somebody asked, what do you do with the people that are close to you that are just not taking this serious? I actually like that question.
Yeah, I would say, because people do have a lot of different thoughts about what's going on now. And I'm not here to really negate anyone, because there's so much we don't know. But what has helped me and what I've tried to kind of maybe impress upon a person. So for example, I may never get sick from coronavirus, but it would be, from my perspective, it would be selfish of me to go out into the society and not try to protect myself from someone who is impacted, because the reality I've seen is that people are being impacted. People are passing away. My niece's grandmother just passed away last week. You know what I mean? So it's a real thing that people are, impacted regardless of whatever the thoughts about the coronavirus may be. The thing that is definitely evident is that people are becoming very ill and some people are passing away. I'm not saying that is a majority. I don't know, I wouldn't say it's a majority, but still every life is important. So for the people who this is impacting, what I've come to realize is that I want to be able to help protect those people, be it that, as they say now, I could be a carrier. You know what I mean? So just trying to think of other people, you know what I mean? Even if I feel like for myself, I may be okay, or I might have some thoughts, the fact that we can see that people are impacted, how can I help protect those people? And that for me, that looks different in how I leave out of my house now, because initially I wasn't wearing a mask necessarily, being honest, but now I'm recognizing that there are people older than me. I may come past someone who has some type of immunosuppression for whatever reason, or elderly. And me just simply going by them and coughing or whatever, could impact them. So for me, it's, trying to just think of that other person.
I think it's really just be socially responsible. Be socially responsible. Understand that while you might not be impacted, and I have my own beliefs around it. Like, I'm not one of those people who are like, oh my God, COVID, COVID, COVID. I know that even though I have my own belief, that as long as I'm socially responsible and make sure that by protecting myself, I'm protecting others, it really doesn't matter about my beliefs don't matter.
Right.
What matters is, did I protect myself to make sure that someone else is protected?
Absolutely.
One question before I let you go, Crystal. Because I don't know if this is another call, but is asymptomatic and the carrier, is it the same thing? Is there a difference? Like, how does that correlate, or does it go together? Does it make sense? Because I'm a little confused by that.
Being asymptomatic and being a carrier. So this is not my specialty, but from what I have an understanding of is you can be a carrier and be asymptomatic. You could, like me, I'm feeling perfectly fine now, but I could be exposed. I could be carrying that infection. Like, I could have touched something, or it could be in me, but I'm, there are ailments that someone can have and they don't it's not manifesting in them. You know what I mean? So yes, you could be a carrier and have absolutely no symptoms, you know, but that's one of the main reasons, although I'm feeling great, I feel really good actually. But I'm not going around my mom because she's 77. She has, she has high blood pressure. She's borderline diabetic. You know what I mean? So while I'm feeling great, if I'm a carrier possibly, and I go to her, then she contract that and she won't feel great. You know, she would be highly impacted. So yes, you could be a carrier and not show any symptom. And I think that's one of the main concerns for why this quarantine has happened, is because there's so much that's not known. And I think at one point it wasn't sure how long a person could be carrying something before maybe they would show symptoms. You know, that's the other part, that even if you're gonna show symptoms, you may not show them right away. You know what I mean? So that's why I think they've given this 14, 15 day kind of like period of time where maybe it could be transmitted to another person. But, you know, there is still a lot that's still being learned and trying to be understood. But that's what my understanding is at this point.
Okay. One more time, Krista, for the people, what is your IG so they can, follow you?
Yes, it's Inspire1, was INSPIRE, the number 1, wellness.
Wellness.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Crystal, so
Thank
much.
you so much.
By the way,
Thank you. I
love
really
your hair.
appreciate.
I love your hair too. I love it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You all take care, and in the future, if you need anything, just let me know.
All right.
No, I will.
All right.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much.
All right. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
So Zoliy, anything you'd like to touch on before we get off for tonight?
Oh, sorry. I wanted to definitely give a huge shout out to Howard Brown. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that light went right out.
Oh well. I wanted to give a huge shout out to Howard Brown Health and their amazing practitioners, medical providers, and every essential worker that is on the front line, making sure that everybody is healthy and safe and getting the type of services that they need. Oh, this is frustrating me. I'm sorry. There we go. I apologize. It's important to know that during this time that community health centers are your essential health facility to making sure that you get your basic needs. And so I implore you to make sure that you're checking in to see how you can take care of yourself through telehealth, make sure that you're using the resources of your community, and to make sure that you are being socially responsible and physically distancing. So physical distancing. I think a lot of times when we are thinking about social distancing, we're saying, oh, I only have, 5 people in my house and we're all sitting like this. No, you have to physically distance yourself 6 feet away from each other. So as opposed to thinking socially distancing, I want people to think physical distancing. And hopefully when they change that narrative on how to better care for each other, will lessen the or flatten or lessen the curve in regards to COVID being spread in our community. I'm very appreciative of everybody that's watching, and please, in order to keep up to date with Back to Basics, go to www.backtobasicsball.com. I have some amazing programming that's going to be coming out that is going to be the road to Back to Basics, and we're going to do it virtually, and we're going to do it in a way that is always an experience. People will get a trophy. People will get
because somebody been asked a question, but it really didn't pertain to that. They said, "What is the origin of your name, Zoliy? What is the origin of that name?"
Actually, I took two names that I saw that I liked, and I just combined them. I always wanted to be a one-namer. I wanted to be a Jack. I wanted to be a Sanaya. I wanted to be a Whitney. I wanted to be anything that when you walked in a room, you said, oh, shit, he's in the building. You didn't need a last name. And I always want to remember that I am what makes my house, and my house supports me. And so as long as I have that one name, it doesn't matter what last name you carry. The last name gives you a sense of pride, though.
And they can follow you on, tell them across the board. What are you at? Zoliy what?
Simply Zoliy, Zoliy. Instagram, Simply Zoliy, on Facebook as well, Zoliy.
All right, thank you, Zoliy. This was the best.
Thank you.
I may guys maybe coming back on. I'm gonna see because it's still early. I'm gonna see who else I can come back on here with, guys. Thank you,
All
guys.
right, thank you so much.
Follow Zoliy and Back to Basics. And
Oh.
go ahead.
If you have more, if you want to talk about, we're going to be doing a full depression, isolation, and physical distancing show on Facebook through the BeLive platform. So tune back in on my page or Shannon Lynn Parker's page on May 12th at 4 p.m. We'll be talking more about mental health. We'll be talking about how to maintain yourself. What's the difference between situational depression and clinical depression, and the things that you need to do to continue to cope with it as we go along through COVID-19.
Okay, we'll see how we can be able to get that going so
Absolutely.
everybody could be in on the conversation.
I just want to say also thank you, Caesar, for using your platform to make sure that people get the resources that they need.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Okay, I appreciate you more. Take care, everyone.
All right.